What's going on, everybody? Good late morning. We are back to our grind with these day 3 centers, guys who are likely to go from rounds 4 through 7, if at all. And first guy we're going to look at in this video is another national champion, Drake Nugent of the Michigan Wolverines. Pretty much everybody on that Michigan offensive line this year is going to at least be considered in this video series because they had a really good offensive line. Nugent's going to be 23 when the season starts, 6'1.5", so nice and short. Definitely on the smaller side with sub 300 pounds. 33-inch arms, 9-inch hands, though. Those will both work. His testing was. He had some bright spots, right? Like the 40 times, not very good. 5.23, it's okay. The 10-yard split's rough, 1.83. Vert's pretty decent, almost 30 inches. 8.5-inch broad is, we don't love that. But the three cone, three cone. He's got some ability to move in space according to the three cone, 7.33. 4.5 20-yard shuttle is good. 25 bench press reps is okay. Not the best, not the worst. So, mixed bag from the combine. Big boards mostly have him in around the 5th. CBS really likes him. They have him barely in the top 100. The database currently has him sitting in about the 5th or 6th round, though, so they're a little colder on him than the major sites. So I think that if I had to guess, I'd say Mock Draft Database has the right read here, personally. Drake Nugent is not a bad player or anything. You can see over the last couple of years he's been a pretty good performer. It's worth noting that in 2022 he was at Stanford, I believe. He transferred to Michigan for 2023. So he slight downtick in overall performance according to PFF, but his pass protection actually improved by a pretty good amount. He allowed 4 sacks in 2022 and only 1 in 2023. Now he's got some great teammates at Michigan for sure, but you control what you can control. So Drake Nugent, his father and I believe his uncle. Well, no, his father played in the NFL, and I think his uncle played at Wazoo and didn't make it into the NFL. So he's got family roots in football. He's got a good amount of strength. He handles bull rushes really well. Pretty good technique overall. The way he uses his hands, the way he stays balanced, the way he gets into his pass sets. I think his technique overall is pretty good. Lots of experience in college. I think he was like a full-time starter for over 3 years. Good punch power when engaging with linemen. And the leverage battle is pretty much always going to be in his favor because he's so short. Now, his measurables are still kind of lackluster. I know what I said about the three cone and the 20-yard shuttle, but overall the measurables are flawed for sure. He's got some things that you really don't like to see from a even a center, and that's definitely going to hold him back eventually. It's going to hold back his ceiling at the very least. He also, while he did show a little bit beyond what people expected with like his three cone and his 20-yard shuttle, he doesn't seem to have the agility to hit moving targets. That's not what he did in college. And genuine pass rushers will be hard for him to handle because he just doesn't have the lateral quickness to keep in front of them overall, I feel like. So I feel like Drake Nugent's ultimately kind of forgettable as a prospect. There are too many issues here. Unlikely to ever become a starting caliber player in the NFL. But I could see him becoming a backup as a gap center, somebody who's just focused on taking on players in a phone booth. That's not probably what we need here. So I don't see any reason to go after Drake Nugent at any point in the draft if you're the Seahawks. It doesn't work in this scheme. Now, if you have a gap-based scheme where you're just focused on playing in that phone booth that we talk about sometimes, I could see maybe spending like a 6th-round pick on him, maybe a late 5th. But that's about it. Okay, next guy, Andrew Raym from Oklahoma, Sooner. 23 when the season starts. Little bit bigger than Drake. 6'4", 314 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 10-inch hands. So the measurables look good, but I'll tell you, this is about as boring of a combine as you're going to find. 5'4", 240, 194 10-yard split. The guy's basically taken the bus. The guy basically has to get on the bus at the bus stop before he goes into his 40. 24.5-inch vertical, 7'11" broad. So he's got very little athleticism. He doesn't have much movement skills. He doesn't have explosiveness in his lower body. There's not a lot going on there. And a couple of the big boards actually a few actually of the major big boards all have him going barely in the seventh round, like right around that undrafted territory. Draft Network, for some reason, really likes him. They actually have him in the third round, which that's ludicrous. That's not going to happen. And Mock Draft Database kind of splits the difference and has him in about the fifth round, which that seems a little more realistic to me. But this combine has to dull the interest just a little bit, don't it? Played fairly well over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, he's allowed 5 sacks and 19 QB hurries and 6 hits. It's not great. We like to see better results from a center because their pass protection assignments tend to be a little less weighty than like a tackle, but it's not terrible. Overall grades have been okay. He certainly looks like an NFL center, I will say that. Some of these guys you get to down here, they don't even look like they can play center in the NFL. Andrew Raym does, so he's got that going for him. He does play with tenacity and ferocity. I will say that for him. It seems like he's got a real ability to understand the mentality. He's effective in mirroring pass rushers. His lateral movement is sufficient for the position, at least, it seems like, which I know these testing numbers don't really indicate. But his mirror in pass rush is pretty good. He's fundamentally sound as a pass protector as well, with things like his hand placement, his balance. So there are some things that are pretty good about Raym here. Now, at the end of the day, we talk about move centers versus gap centers a lot in this series, and Andrew Raym is certainly looks the part of a gap center. He's not going to cover a lot of space with his lateral quickness. He's not a very good athlete. The combine scores speak for itself. Sometimes when he gets out into space, he's out of control. Sometimes it seems like he's just not in complete control of where his body's going. Doesn't keep things tight the way you need to. Gets caught out of balance sometimes. Sometimes even when he's just trying to protect in his phone booth, it doesn't look that great. And overall, he's just not a very consistent player. There are some reps that are good and some reps that are really bad. He's got a lot to work on. So he is a mauler, I will say that for him. He's got a lot of brawn. He's got a good amount of strength, but he's not in very good control of it. So he's going to have to be a developmental piece. And again, I just don't see the fit in Seattle. We don't need a center like this so much. These guys who just kind of live in their phone booth, that's I'm not getting the sense that's what we're trying to build here. What we're trying to build is an offensive line of movers. That's when you look at the backups we've signed over the last couple of weeks. Guys like Nick Harris, guys like the guard we signed yesterday from the Rams. They're not great players, but what they are is guys who know how to play in space. This doesn't seem like that kind of guy. So I don't see any reason to be interested in him. He won't be a zone center even on his best day. So let somebody else take the project on. I'm sure somebody will at some point, but I don't see why it should be the Seahawks. All right, so next up we have Kingsley Eguakun from Florida. So another Kingsley in this draft. There's also a tackle that we'll talk about down the line. Florida Gator, could not find his age. 6'3" and a half, 304 pounds, 32 and a half 32 and a half inch arms, 10 and a quarter, 10 and an eighth, inch hands. His only combine measurable was the bench press, where he did about average, 26. He's on two of the major big boards. CBS likes him a lot and has him in the late fourth. PFF has him going undrafted. And Mock Draft Database has him going in like the early-ish seventh round. So pretty wide range here. I do think he'll get drafted, but probably not by much. The issue here is that even his results in college were not great. Like his PFF grade in 2022 was 55.6. He allowed a lot of QB hurries, averaged more than one allowed per game. And then in 2023, the numbers look better, but he only played like, what was it, a quarter of the season, and then he got hurt. So we don't have a big sample size of him playing at a high level. We have a sample size of him playing at a mediocre level and then not getting the opportunity to ascend to a good level last year because he got hurt. Potential still there, but there are some issues here. So the positives about Kingsley: engages well in pass protection. I think that he does a really good job of launching his hands into the defender. I think he does a really good job with hand placement. I think he's somebody who starts out his pass reps really well. He's got a firm latch after he's starting a block. He doesn't let go. He pushes through until he wins the rep. He's also relatively capable moving in space. He's somebody who at Florida was being used like that and did fairly well. Not great, which we'll get to in a second here, but fairly well. He does play without leverage. He plays too tall, needs to learn how to sink his hips, get lower. Not enough strength to win in the trenches against bull rushers, which is not surprising for a relatively small center prospect, but there's not a lot of strength here. He's just kind of okay. People will bull rush him, and nose tackles are going to push him around. He's got a bit of a weak anchor overall, and when he gets into space, he can move well. He can get up to the second level. He can climb up to those linebackers. He does struggle a little bit to finish those reps, though. He needs to hit the target. He can get to the target. He can do all the things leading up to hitting the target, but hitting the target is something that I feel like is just a little out of control, and he's got to work on his balance. So this one's actually the most intriguing guy in this video to me. Mobile interior lineman with some upside to grow beyond what he was at Florida. He's got some stuff to work on for sure. Needs to work on leverage, needs to work on hitting moving targets. I don't think he'll ever be like a strong gap center or somebody who can take on bull rushers. That's fine. But he needs to really work on some of the little finer points of playing the position. But this guy, I don't mind. And look, if he's there in the sixth round, if you feel like there's flexibility here, like he can bump over to left guard for a little bit, it's not a bad pick. You go get him, and hopefully by next year, you've got a guy who can be your backup left guard and, well, mainly, but hopefully both, but at the very least, backup center because Nick Harris is on a 1-year deal, and Oluwatimi's hopefully going to become your long-term center. But this guy seems to me to be a reasonable fit. So Kingsley Eguakun, I would say sixth round or later. If you think he's got a little bit of guard flexibility, make it happen. All right, one more video coming later today with more late round guards. See you guys later. Go Hawks.